have those conversations, not in the way of loss of a parking spot, not in the way of loss of some inches, but in what are we gaining, right? What are we gaining? What are we telling our future? So I'm not looking at everything in a deficit manner, right? What are we gaining? Right? What are we gaining? What are we leaving for our children? Now you're able to walk to the park. You're able to walk with the stroller. You're able to walk with the stroller and the wheelchair, right? And so it's not just about losing, but what are we gaining? And we have to take care of our climate.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
Ethrophic Burnett.
Ethrophic.
Yes.
So I'm not pronouncing the TH sound.
Correct. It's
Okay.
ethrophic.
Ethrophic. That's easy. It's just the TH. The TH is going to lead people astray.
Yes, it does.
Oh, another thing. Do you still work for the city?
Yes, I do.
Okay, that is a little tricky, right?
Yes, it is.
So, can you speak freely today?
It's after 5 o'clock. Yeah, I'm done.
This is the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Today, I'm speaking with Ward 5 City Council candidate running for Minneapolis City Council, Ethrophic Burnett. Welcome to the Wedge Live podcast.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Thank you so much, John, for having me here this evening. Thank you.
And is this your first interview of the campaign?
Yes. Yes, I've had I had an interview with North News, but it was just by phone call. Yes.
Okay. Let's start with a quiz. We're going to have a little fun to begin with, and I'm going to play some sound for you from a recent council meeting, and it's Ward 5 related because it's from Ward 5 council member Jeremiah Ellison, and then I'm going to ask you a question about it.
I feel like that kid with in Lord of the Flies with the conch shell.
Do you know what he means by that? What is the kid from Lord of the Flies with the conch shell? What is he saying about himself when he says that?
So, John, I'm not familiar with that particular phrase, right? I'm not for sure if that is a movie or, I know that Councilman Ellison is, he's very, into the arts and like different types of movies and things. And so I'm not really for sure, if he was referencing a movie or what. I'm not really for sure of what he was referencing in that with that particular statement.
You and I are in the same boat, because when he said that, I was like, what does he mean? Because I've never read the book. So it's a book that was made into a movie, and you and I are in the same boat. But I've come to find out he means he's the mature, thoughtful one, as everyone around him kind of loses control and eats each other alive. I don't think there was cannibalism in the book, but, there's a bad environment going on around him, and he's the mature and thoughtful one. That's what he means by that. And I also had to ask what it means because I never read the book. Apparently it's a popular thing to read in school.
Yeah.
Do you watch council meetings?
Yes, I do.
And so do you understand the dynamic he's describing where he's like, here we go again. Can we all get along and like communicate better and work these things out?
I do understand where Councilman Ellison is coming from, and that's also part of my campaign is about, we are living in some prevalent times, and irregardless of which side that you are on or whatever, everyone who is an elected official gets an election certificate, and they represent either with the city council, their ward. However, it takes communication, right? It takes communication all the way around. John. It takes communication with the other 12, right? And it takes communication, more importantly, with your constituents, right? And so I just think what Councilman Ellison was saying is the same thing that I'm saying, is that how do we be able to have a conversation about things. And we all know that we represent 33,000 individuals in our wards, or right along with businesses and other things, right? So how do we make for sure that, yes, as we're there representing our ward, representing our constituents, but we also have to understand that we have other coworkers, right? And you have to communicate. And whether you, I know what he's saying, that some discussions probably could have been held in a different way to have a different outcome.
So I think you're the first council candidate that I'm talking to in 2025, our election year. So also maybe a first for me too, in addition to being the first for you.
Okay, we each other first. That's what's up.
And one of the reasons I was kind of excited to talk to you is when your name first popped up, I Googled you, as people do, and a Star Tribune article came up from 2016, I think it was. Do you remember that? Adam Bells, the Star Tribune reporter, he was writing about housing. It was a good article.
Adam Bells. Adam. Yes. Adam Bells. Yes, so, I do remember that.
It was a great article about housing, but it was also like a really nice portrait of your family. And I feel like I know a little bit about you and your family from reading that. So first, did Jessica, is it Jessica? Is that one of your daughters? Did she graduate with the criminal justice degree?
Actually, she switched to psychology.
Oh, she switched.
She switched to psychology. She switched to psychology, yes. And she ended up coming home and finishing at the U.
So one of the themes from that article about housing, so you're coming from Chicago to Minneapolis, and then you end up moving to Chaska, and there's like a big culture adjustment. Like it's culture shock moving to Chaska, this all-white neighborhood. And then 13 years later, you find yourself in a circumstance where you have to come back to Minneapolis. And then there's culture shock coming the other way. And I thought that was a really interesting dynamic. I don't know what my question is here. Are you glad you ended up coming back to Minneapolis? Did that end up being the right thing for you and your family?
Yes, most definitely. It ended up being the right thing for me and my family. Yes, it did. The opportunity that we had to live in Chaska and to live in Carver County, I gained a lot out there. Yes, we were the first Black family out there, but however, me as a person, I'm not easily moved, and I always trying to look for ways of communicating and seeing where there's opportunity at for us to agree. Right, we can easily look for the disagreements, easily look for the things that that's not common. But how do we find the things where we're commonality at? And so, yes, we lived out there for 13, 14 years, and moving to Minneapolis, North Minneapolis, a block off Broadway. It was a difference. It was a difference for my children. I grew up in Chicago. It was a difference for them. But however, I think that before I purchased my home over here in North Minneapolis, first of all, I was already a member at church. I went to Shiloh. I attended Shiloh Temple. So I already was, prevalent, and I had friends, and my best friend had lived over here, and she knew that I was looking for housing. She knew that, that I was going to lose my housing because my daughter had moved out of campus. Jessica moved off campus, and it triggered, right? Because when you in any type of affordability or stabilization at that time, when my daughter turned 18 and she went off to college, as long as she lived on campus, it was okay. You had to do reporting, but when she moved off campus, it triggered my housing, right? And so it triggered my thought process about buying the house. And so that's when I started, my best friend had told me about all of the good things that was coming on, that was happening in North Minneapolis. And I started coming over here, and even right after the tornado is when I purchased. What I saw and what I still see is, I saw fathers standing on the bus stop waiting, taking their kids and putting them on the bus stop, getting them off. I saw them, walking to the store. I saw them looking out for their neighbors. I saw a community who looked out for each other. Yes, I also understand that there is a community that has disinvestment, a lack of investment, a lack of not really listening to the residents here when it comes to what their needs are and how they get those needs met. I understand that Minneapolis, Minnesota is flowing with affluence and flowing with funding and funding streams. We saw that in the surplus through the state. However, it's about how do you get continued access? How do you have continual access? And I think that's what it is for North Minneapolis and our residents and those of us that live here, is how do we get continued access to all of those resources? How do we get continued access, as my former ED used to say, continue access to the pond, right? Not just access one time to the pond, but continue access to the pond. And I think that is what's most important, in that the Fifth Ward residents see themselves in the things that are here and in things that are coming and things that they needed and the things that they've been asking for years.
So one of the themes running through that article about your family is like, do lower income, do black families, like do they need to be out in the suburbs in order to get the same resources that white families do? Or is it possible to provide that in Minneapolis? And I'm wondering, like, you lived through it. You're not speaking about this theoretically. Like, did you come to any conclusions about that debate?
John, what I can say about that is that, first of all, I do not believe that black families do better in a majority community where they're the minority, right? I do not believe that that it's fair for black families to have to travel 2-3 suburbs over to go get food, just cultural perspective food, right? And I wouldn't even just say me as a black woman, but even other cultures, because Minneapolis is rich in diversity, right? But for me as a black woman, and speaking on that and speaking about black families specifically, moving to 3-tier, 4-tier suburbs for quote unquote opportunity housing, right? Yes, we all want our children to be safe, right? We all want our children to have access to good education. We want our children to be able to get their driver's license at the age of 16, right? We want our children to be able to have opportunities to be able to go to college, right? We all want the same things for ourselves and our children, right? If the basic needs and desires are basically the same. So I don't believe that you have to take the families out of their current neighborhood where they have that social capital at, where they know their neighbors, and they know that their neighbor might know that they might work an overnight shift and their neighbor might come check on them, compared to being in a community where you are the minority. And some individuals might not understand that, right? And it might be frowned upon. Some things that you might have as a cultural person might be frowned upon. So no, what I believe in is taking those same resources and those same access and that same thing from the suburbs and bring them to the city. Making sure that our children and our families know that they have access and opportunity too, that your environment is not the end. Your environment is a situation of lack of investment, lack of listening to the individuals that live here. And it was done intentionally. And then we teach our children it was done intentionally. It's not just, this was done intentionally. And then to tell families to move to the suburbs for you and your children to have a better life, it's also done intentionally. Because then the property value within the city and in the communities, that they become cheaper and they become ripe for for what it's called and what we've known always has happened as gentrification, because redlining never really stopped. It just shifted.
I'm sure listeners and you are familiar with the Minneapolis 2040 plan, the zoning reforms that came along with that. It was adopted and implemented about 5 years ago, and it's been to court, and it's finally, that case was settled. But since you're running for election to the city council in 2025, that means you will have the opportunity to influence and vote on the city's next comprehensive plan, because it will be at about the 10-year mark from the old one while you're in office. So I'm wondering if there are things you would like to see, if you're elected, in the 2050 comprehensive plan for Minneapolis.
There are things that I would like to see in the 2050 plan. However, I have to, as I stated earlier, yes, I believe in working with my constituents and listening to my constituents and making sure that they understand the process that happens at City Hall, that what things that we really need, what are things that we really desire, and that we need over here within the Fifth Ward, right? We know that climate is a big thing, right? We know that energy and our green jobs is a big thing. Environment, right? Economic development and housing, right? And housing for all. And I want to make for sure that when I talk about housing, that and economic development, especially housing, that we're not just talking about, when we're talking about housing is a multi-tier. It's not just quote unquote low income. And affordability is a formula where you can do 40%, 50%, 60% of the AMI, right? It's not always 30%. And so I wanted to clarify that when it comes to housing, right? Also, we have a number of stock of opportunities when I think of development, right? Currently, we have opportunity within the ward when it comes to development, when it comes to developing some of our property that has not been utilized within a number of years, right? And we can even go back to COVID in 2020. And so how do we take that, and we work with community members to take those properties and make for sure that they are utilized in a way and brought back to life and utilized in a way that community is going to utilize them. That's economic development, and that's turning something that they can own.
So broadly speaking, big picture, if you were out door knocking, as you will probably do to get elected, or calling people on the phone to say, hey, it's me, vote for me this year, like, what do you think, or what do you know, because you've obviously talked to people already, like, what do you know to be like the top priorities in Ward 5? Like, what do people need? List me off quickly, 2 or 3 things, and then, like, if you want to elaborate, go ahead.
I would say engagement. From what I've understand, the Fifth Ward residents would like to just continue to be more engaged, and I am engagement. That is part of my background as well. Engagement at all different levels, right? I'm making sure that I am keeping them informed and engaged about the process, and keeping what goes on at City Hall as transparent and accessible as I possibly can. Another thing I've been hearing, of course, is public safety. We here in our ward, our precinct, our 4th precinct, we have always had the highest call volume, and it is usually that dog watch shift, right? That third shift is the shift that we've always been that we've never had been, was we need the staff, right? And so when it comes to public safety, we need for all of our public safety to be fully staffed, right, and to be fully funded for my constituents, for when they call whatever service they need, John, within that public safety system, whether it be fire, whether it be BCR, the mental health response, whether it be the crime prevention specialists, the navigators, the MPD, the emergency services, whatever it may be, right, that the alternatives and prevention, that those services are there to meet the needs of the residents of the ward, right? I also know that housing and economic development, right? Economic development is a big thing, right? And knowing that we need economic development to make for sure that we offset our taxes, right? That we off, because when you have more businesses, it offset the property taxes, right? When you have more businesses that are owned and operated by the community members and that that service those community members, that is keeping the dollar within the ward, right? So if if you live in the ward, you have a business in the ward, you patronize the business in the ward, it keeps the dollar more circulated within the ward than it does taking the money out to Brooklyn Park to go to this store, taking the money here to go to this store. If you have those services and the things that you need within the ward that are owned and operated by individuals who live here, that money circulates, right? Then you build in generational wealth. They're more likely you're going to buy a home. More likely you're going to buy a duplex. More than likely you're going to buy some more property, or you're going to invest in property. You're going to do an investment. The dollar stays, it circulates, and it can circulate within the family.
So are you satisfied with the city's current direction on public safety? Like, do you think it's going in the right direction? Do you like the job that Chief O'Hara is doing, that the mayor is doing? Do you think we're on the right track generally?
Well, what I would say is that we here, the city of Minneapolis and the voters and the residents throughout the whole city has been through a lot, right? COVID came on like we've never seen before, and we had the murder of George Floyd and the civil unrest. We had a huge shift in loss and numbers with MPD, a huge turnover in staff within the city, within the municipality of the city. And now, I still think that we are rebuilding, and in the midst of that rebuilding, we have to continue to repair, right? And what I mean by repair the harm, repair the relationships. There has to be repair while we are in the middle of rebuilding. And so, because there was such a loss, that there needs to be time to make that up, and it's not going to be made up easily and overnight. That has been a huge transition internally with the city, and with just a huge transition. And so knowing that it takes time to reset, it takes time to build. And in the middle of that, because we have experienced so much here in the city of Minneapolis, we have to repair the harm. We have to repair the harm. We have to have some conversations that probably is going to feel uncomfortable, and we have to be willing to restore that and rebuild.
How about Chief O'Hara? Do you good chief or bad chief? There's an easy yes or no question. Mixed chief.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I can't say that, I can't say yes or no when it comes to Chief O'Hara.
It's mixed.
Bad, good chief or bad chief. I can't say that. I know that any job you do is hard, right?
Right.
And sometimes we forget to see people as people. We see their job. We don't see them. And so I can't say good or bad.
Do you think he was the right choice at the time? Like, he was the right person for the job right now?
I would have to think about that, John, because I would have to look at who else was in that pool.
I just want to know, like, generally, is he moving us in the right direction, like in the job that he's doing? Not that you necessarily would have voted to appoint him or voted to say he should have been hired, but just like, the direction he's moving MPD.
Okay, so because I did not have that vote, right? And
Right.
that I'm not currently
Right.
elected. I'm looking forward to getting sworn in January 2026. Yeah. Right, I'm looking forward to get sworn in. However, what I will say is that that with the things that he has done with his staff and the internal and trying to recruit and from the staff that I do know, right? I've had the opportunity to know a number of different MPD officers. And so I would say what the work that he's doing there from what I know of internally. And because that's where the work starts at, right? The work starts internally, right? And so when the work starts internally, we will see it externally. And so I would say that internally, from what I know of internally, yes. that he understands that when he took this job, that we was under a consent decree. He understood what it meant, that when he took this position, he said yes and got sworn in, that we had the MDHR report. He knew that we were short. He knew he was going to have to come in. He knew it was going to be some long days and nights and very little sleep. So he knew that taking a position. And so I don't think he walked in here blindsidedly like he didn't know that he was short-staffed.
Let's talk about the it's good that we have you here, because yesterday's council meeting was a little raucous, and they were talking about the group violence intervention, and the city council wanted to move $1 million from the city to the county. What do you make of the debate over that? And let's start there.
It was a very long discussion, and I think some of the discussion that was taking place could have been taking place in chambers before they got to diocese, and I think that there's nothing wrong with having healthy discussions. And there's nothing wrong with having healthy discussions and having discussions and trying to hold down or trying to make for sure that you get your point across, right? At some point, it got a little disrespectful, I don't think that. I don't agree with anyone being disrespectful to another human being at all. No matter, yes, I know we all have feelings and we all have emotions, but we need to be able to have control of that and have emotional intelligence to be able to have control of that. I think that some conversations and questions can be held in chambers and not on diocese.
Do you think the money should be moved? Do you think that was a good proposal?
Well, John, what I will say is that there has been a number of great staff that has departed the city. And unfortunately, when you have staff members who create things and the whole basically department and staff breaks down and leave, it leaves a deficit, right? And so there's been a deficit, and it's not just in maybe one department, but there's been a deficit when there's a huge turnover in staff, and there's no continuity with that, and there's no system built up to make for sure that there's continuity in things when there is a great departure, right? And so what I will say is that, just like I said about MPD and us in the city, there has to be some rebuilding, right? And so right now, that it's nothing wrong with rebuilding and rehabbing and under construction while you restore some things and get some things, get some certain positions filled, make for sure that there's an understanding of all of the initiatives that lives in that department, all of the programs. And so I think that having partners at the table that can help you in a time of crisis is a good thing, right? And having partners at the table that are right across the street to help you in the middle of a crisis is a good thing, right? And I think that, like I said, it goes back to communication regarding that and making for sure that there's an understanding that there are certain departments within the city that had such a great deficit due to departures that they need to be repaired. And there needs to be some repair and some rebuilding, and it need to be some construction. And so while that happens, there's nothing wrong with asking your neighbor to, hey, can you help me out here while my kitchen is being rehabbed? Is it okay if I utilize your water, while my kitchen is under construction?
So Luana Nelson Brown wrote this thing on Medium, And for listeners, the context here is Luana Nelson Brown is the recently resigned director of the Neighborhood Safety Department, which is the department where this $1 million that the city council is trying to move to the county is coming from. And she wrote some things about you that I wanted to give you a chance to respond to. Did you read that?
Yes, okay. I have.
I'm going to read them, and then just so listeners can hear them, and then I'm going to get your response to it. So the first thing she says is, one of my former employees, Ethrophic Burnett, who for years approved millions of dollars in invoices without requesting documentation, is now running for city council. So kind of like this saying, hey, watch out, this person who I think is not doing good things is running for city council. And then another quote of hers, in a series of emails between us, I repeatedly asked her why she had never required general ledgers or supporting documentation before approving payments. Her responses failed to justify the lack of oversight, instead deflecting responsibility and expressing frustration over having to implement a basic financial accountability process that should have been in place all along. So is that accurate, what she's saying?
So this is what I will say, John. First of all, I am a Black woman, right? And I do not subscribe to attacking other Black women. Right? I don't subscribe to that. Second of all, what I will say to that is that the city of Minneapolis has a process for everything, right? The city of Minneapolis has a process for everything. I cannot sign checks, right? I cannot sign checks. The city of Minneapolis has a process for everything. And so I am not the approver, the last approver for invoices to get paid, and I do not sign off on it. There's a number of mechanisms and processes that the city has in place for approval of invoices and things like that. Also, to the statement that is very incorrect, the department had a departure, as I stated earlier, about other departments having a great departure. And I became the contract manager in March of 2023, and I departed that department in January of 2024. So I was only contract manager for a very brief time.
This is very unusual to have somebody resign from their department head job and then write a thing criticizing their employee. Like, do you have any insight that will help us understand why she's saying these things that you have said are not accurate? Like, do you know, can you help us understand that dynamic, why she would do that?
No, John, I do not know. Unfortunately, I'm not a mind reader. I wish I could read people's mind, but I can't, like I stated, I have no idea what is behind that. What I can say is, like what I did say, is that the city has a process for everything. And the transition from that specific department, the transition from the health to out of the health department into a standalone department could have been better, right? But I have no idea exactly what the former director, Luana Nelson Brown, what her intentions are. What I can say is that the city has a process. I've done nothing wrong, and that's the reason why I am running for 5th Ward, to make for sure that I continue on, because I do believe in the community violence ecosystem, right? There's a huge ecosystem, right, for alternatives and intervention and prevention to violence. I do believe in the whole ecosystem, right? I do understand that it is a learning curve, right, for municipalities. It's been a learning curve for municipalities and county institutions and state institutions for the last 5 years since the murder of George Floyd. And so I understand that. But I have no idea what her intentions was or anything like that. I can't speak to that.
Here's another housing question. I was reading your website, and in the housing section, you mentioned think you said you're going to be a champion for rent stabilization. How do you think the policy's been working in St. Paul? A lot of people are saying it has made it more difficult to build new housing in St. Paul, and like new construction is cratered. And so I'm wondering if there are things we can learn from St. Paul. Do you think it has worked there?
Well, I believe in learning from our sisters across the river, right? And so, there's a number of things that we can learn from St. Paul. So when it comes to specifically the rent stabilization, John, that we can learn our lessons learned from St. Paul. What's the good thing that happened with the rent stabilization? How do we tweak it to make it fit in Minneapolis, right? What are the policies that we can do that are a little different than what St. Paul did? And try to look at that, and also look at what does it look like? What does the metric? What does success look like for the property owners, the developers, and more importantly, our tenants, who we are making sure that we're trying to house and keep housed, especially in this economy and what's coming toward us. And so, yes, I am definitely looking at St. Paul and trying to figure out what can we do here in Minneapolis to make for sure that it works, and looking at the different things, looking at what's working and what's not working, and how can we tweak things. Whatever we do here in Minneapolis is always going to have to be tweaked, whether we look at our sister city, St. Paul, or whether we look in another state. It's going to always have to be tweaked to make it fit the residents of Minneapolis.
So speaking about like the policy ideas you would want to implement here, because there's a lot of details that go into rent stabilization. It's not just one. Like what happens in another city, you're right, is not necessarily what you will do in your city. So I'm wondering, like things like a new construction exemption, is that like a thing you would be interested, or other like policy tweaks that you think are a good idea to do here that maybe St. Paul didn't have when they first enacted theirs?
Yes, I am looking at some different policies when it comes to zoning and exclusionary zoning and things like that, because there are some opportunities, as I stated, that we can learn from St. Paul and figure out how we make it work here in Minneapolis. There are some opportunities. I have seen some opportunities where we can tweak the policies to make it work. We're going to have to get in there and work with our policy and research department and see what that looks like, and also making for sure that we're working with our city attorney, because we just can't just come forth with a policy just out of our head, right? It has to be language, it has to fit, it has to make for sure that what we're doing doesn't fit in the charter, doesn't fit. So there's a whole process that goes with that, and there's whole departments that also go with that. So we want to make for sure that what we're doing is not just going to benefit our tenants in the long run, and not just for today, but longevity, that we want to stabilize housing. We want that property to always be in that model. So it's not just a one-time thing, but it's long time.
So it's an exciting time for transit in Ward 5. You've got, the C and D line, those bus rapid transit routes crisscrossing North Minneapolis. You have the potential, if we ever build it, the Blue Line extension coming through North Minneapolis eventually. So are there things about transit in general, or the Blue Line extension, that you are particularly interested and concerned about seeing implemented well? Like what are the opportunities and concerns that you have, and things that you want to influence if you're elected?
Well, the C and the D line is already here, and it is our rapid transit, and we do have, from what I know, that we do have a lot of ridership on both of those lines, and I do know that my children use those lines quite often as well, and so I do know that they are utilized. When it comes to the light rail, I do know that there's a lot of little hiccups right now when it comes to the federal dollars. What I'm looking at is making for sure there's no displacement. So currently, even when I get sworn in January, John, I won't have a say on anything, because it's a county and it's Met Council, right? It's the county and Met Council. So I think that being at the table, having those discussions, with Commissioner Irene Fernando, constantly being in communication with her, constantly being in communication with Met Council, the staff that's at Met Council, the staff that's at the city, the neighborhoods that is going to impact, those community members that is going to impact. I am a block away. I live 1 block from where they're going to put I will be able to look and see the light rail come past my house. Actually, right?
Are you excited about that?
So what I want to make for sure there's no displacement.
Right.
Right. There's no displacement. I want to make for sure there's no displacement with any of the current residents, business owners, right? No displacement. And what does it look like to make for sure that our residents have the opportunity to take advantage of those opportunity land before the light rail is built, right? So there's a way as a city council member that we can be at that table and make it for sure that our constituents are not left out of the conversation, right? Knowing that it is owned by our partners, right? But we still need to be at the table and have those conversations and making sure that when it comes to displacement, that does not happen. When it comes to, if it happens, what does relocation look like? What does that funding look like? And considering that project is a multi-year project, is that a one-time funding? Is that funding if a business has to be relocated to build a light rail? And that project is a 3-year plan? What does that look like for that business to be relocated for 3 years, right? It's not just a one-time thing. I think it's more about what do the community want and need, right? And how do they get those needs met? How do they make for sure that their voices are heard, that they're the loudest voices besides the county and Met Council, and that the county and Met Council are hearing them?
Here's a quick question, and I'm curious. Do you have any endorsers already, like elected officials or organizations? It's possible you don't. I was just curious.
No, I don't.
No, not yet?
No, not yet. I'm working on it.
Because you mentioned Irene Fernando, and I'm like, well, is Irene Fernando supporting her? But I guess even if she was, she wouldn't have announced by now, so.
Yes, well,
Okay.
what I would say is, so, John, I know that, so I've had the privilege of understanding how Minneapolis works. We have a park board, we have a school board, we have county, we have state, right? And so I was able to get all of this learning before I came to the city. When I came to the city, it helped me connect the dots to our needs and and the policies in the purse, right? We need the policies to change and we need the money to line up with that, right? And so I know that it's going to take working with Commissioner Irene Fernando, working with Representative Bajay, working with Representative Lee, working with Senator Champion, is what I'm saying. I have an understanding that in order for us to continue access to the pond, it's going to take all of us working together, because we are a ward that lives within the county that serves a district. Right, and so knowing that we have to work with our school board, we got to work with our park board, we got to work with everyone because we all in this together. So that's the reason why I say that, is that I have an understanding that the city is a municipality, but you cannot work this alone. I cannot do it. I cannot make for sure that we have access and continued access without the school board, without the parks, without the county, without the state. Because it's all a part of it. The schools and the park live in the ward. They are built in the ward. The ward is in a district.
Right. We're getting close to the end here. Another thing I noticed from your website, lots of supportive language for alternative transportation, sidewalks, and bike lanes, which, I'm happy with that. I can sign on to that. But it's a thing that can become kind of heated politically, like people are upset that they lose a parking space or multiple parking spaces because you gave some of that space to either a bus for a bus lane or a bike lane or wider sidewalks or more green space, more trees, things like that. So so are you supportive of like the direction the city has gone with bike lanes and bus lanes, that general direction on transportation and safer streets?
Well, when I look at the transportation and safer streets, I look at it as safer streets and transportation, but I also look at it as climate, right? Right, because we want to make for sure that we leave something here for the next generations to come behind us, right? And so even though, yes, I understand that it may be an inconvenience, but when we look at it, and we look at it not just in a way and have those conversations, not in the way of loss of a parking spot, not in the way of loss of some inches, but in what are we gaining, right? What are we gaining? What are we telling our future? So not looking at everything in a deficit manner, right? What are we gaining? Right? What are we gaining? What are we leaving for our children? Now you're able to walk to the park. You're able to walk with the stroller. You're able to walk with the stroller and the wheelchair, right? And so it's not just about losing, but what are we gaining? And we have to take care of our climate.
Do you have any like street projects in North Minneapolis in Ward 5 that you're excited about near you? Like, is there anything coming down the pike?
Not that I know of off the top
Maybe,
of my
maybe
head.
a recent one that you were particularly impressed by, like you're like, wow, they really did a good job on that one. That's an example of things we should do more of.
And street projects on repairing streets.
Yeah. Like maybe they changed up a street in a way that you found to be positive.
Yes. What I can say is the roundabouts. What they call out, they are roundabouts, but what we call them here at the city is traffic calming, right? So we call them traffic calming measures, right? The traffic calming measures, I do like, because you have to pause, you have to wait. You're not just speeding down, right? I do like that. I do agree with that. I think that was a great mechanism. Also, the speed bumps. And so when I remember when I first came to the city, it was trying to get speed bumps laid down all year round because of our weather here can be an issue, because in the wintertime, right? And then at one point back in the day, we had to put them down and take them up, right? But to see that now that we can have speed bumps year round, those little bumps, yes, because it cautions people to slow down. It cautions people to be aware of what goes on in your surrounding, right? And you're not driving that fast. We have a lot of kids in our community, especially when the weather's nice. Kids are out riding their bikes. Children are out riding their bikes. They're on skateboards. They're trying to go to the skate park, or they're trying to go to the park to ride their bike with their friends. And so I do like the traffic calming measures that we have.
I find that people are afraid of change, but with street projects especially, like once they are implemented, I think mostly people would not want to go back to the way things were before. At least that's what I find, like in my neighborhood in the Wedge here.
Yeah, well, you know, John, change is never good, and we are all human beings. When we experience change, our first thing is to buck up against, right? And especially if we wasn't prepared for that change, right? And so, but I think once that change happens and we look at it like, oh, that was a good thing, because now you have to pay attention when you're going to North High. You got to slow down when you're going to North Commons, you know, when you're going to Farwell, when you're going to the parks, when you're picking up your children from the school, there's a roundabout, you know, even the buses have to pay attention. So everyone has to pay attention. So I think that, you know, when it comes to change, as human beings, we automatically be like, what? You know, but then once we get and see it and understand it and feel it, we like, okay.
So this is the question where you're going to bare your soul to me, and I'm going to see who you truly are. So, and I want to warn you, don't answer this like a politician. So you're going to be tempted to give like a laundry list of your campaign priorities. You're going to be tempted, and I'm going to ask you not to do that because we've talked about that a lot here. So like, why are you doing this? Running for office, it could be hard on your personal life. Like it won't always be fun for you. People will say mean things about you and complain, and like they'll be calling you at all hours, and it's going to be stressful. And so, like, what is the driving force behind you running for office? Like, I can think of the things in my life that motivate me to, like, make a change in the world. So what is that for you? What is the thing that you're really, really trying to get done? Like your secret plan, the thing that really burns you up and, like, fuels you. What is it?
What is my secret plan?
Yeah, like, did something happen in your life that you go back to, or like your core value, like something happened in your life that made you want to do this and, like, make a change for the city, for this community? Like, what is that experience or the thing that motivates you, the thing you want to change?
I think the motivation stems from my mother and my grandmother. The motivation stems from my family, my upbringing. I know that's where the motivation stems from. And when it comes to me running now, it's the fact of I see the needs, and I see how we can have continued access, right? It is about making for sure that, yes, I know that is a lot of work. But however, I'm dedicated to the work to make for sure that it's about my future. I mean, John, I have grandchildren, right? I'm a grandmother. I love my community, right? I love my neighborhood, and I want to continue to see. My neighborhood thrive. I mean, it's my children and my grandchildren, and the people that I love in this community, and the people that I know and have had the opportunity to meet, to work with, to support. That's the motivation, and I know it's a lot of work. I know people call, and I know some people might not like you. People will disagree with you. People will take what you say and twist it.
People are going to write blog posts about you. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah, they write blog posts about you. And I know that that you have to have a support system, right? And so knowing that I have to have a support system for myself, right? And knowing that this is not personal, right? A lot of these people don't know me who might have some negative things to say about me, or might not agree with me on some issues. They don't really know me, and not taking things personally, right? Not taking things personally, and understanding that there's gonna be people that there are your alliance for a specific project or a specific issue. Then you have allegiance for this. There's different. Doing this work is multi-layered and multifunctional, and I understand that. I understand that. I've been there in the city of Minneapolis for the last 7 years, and understanding that it's a lot of work. That you're not just gonna come in. It's not about shaking hands and taking pictures. Previous to the government structure change, working with departments, and also and still working with departments, but working with them to get the needs of your constituents met. How do you do that, and how do you work with them? Oh, excuse me. And a lot of times it's also about, working cross sector, because I still have Fourth Ward. I still have Councilman Vita and Councilman Cashman. Right, and so a lot of the things and issues and concern doesn't stop at the geographical line. A lot of the needs and concerns are alike. So there is a where you have to be able to have some conversations to work together to get the needs met of both wards. And I also board of Rainville's ward and North Loop.
This is for real the last question. It's kind of fun. What do you have to recommend to the audience? It could be anything. It could be a place or a TV show or a movie or a book. What do you do to relax or unwind or pass the time that you think other people should give a try?
I will say, give yourself grace. Give yourself mercy and love on yourself. Love on yourself. love on yourself, because things have been, these last 5 years have not been the best. They have been what we've never seen before. And we have experienced traumatic things these last 5 years. Love on yourself, forgiveness, and each and every day is another day for you to learn and do something different that we didn't do the day before, right? We have a number right now with our current federal administration. There's a number of things that we probably going to encounter here as a city within the next 3.5 years, right? 4 years. And so love on yourself. Give yourself room for mercy and grace. Give your neighbors room for mercy and grace. Take care of yourself. Check on your neighbors. You know.
Okay, when you're taking care of yourself, though, what are you doing?
What do I do when I take care of myself?
When you're taking care of yourself, what is the specific activity you do to take care of yourself?
Well, there are a lot of things I like to do. I really I believe in body work. Massages, acupuncture, chiro, getting it out the body. I am a fan of body work. I pray. I believe in prayer. I am a fan of a hot bath. I am a fan of spending time in the bath by myself, and just loving my heart and just holding my heart in my hand and just covering it and telling myself that I have to love it and I have to protect it, and that sometimes it's okay. You know, you can't give it to everybody, and I have to be able to keep some of the 8-ounce bottle of water to myself, because I have nothing if I give it all away. But I am a fan. I believe in prayer. I believe in body work. I am real big on acupuncture and chiro, real big on it. I'm a huge fan of acupuncture.
So I think it's important that we end this episode the way we started, which is Jeremiah Ellison, because Jeremiah Ellison is leaving us. So this is kind of a tribute to Jeremiah Ellison. We're going to play his conch shell quote again that confused me and a lot of people.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I feel like that kid in Lord of the Flies with the conch shell.
This is our tribute to you, Jeremiah Ellison, the kid with the conch shell who's going to go off into the sunset and do great things with his life. So Ethrophic Burnett, thank you for spending 60 minutes of your life with me. Can you believe we did this for so long?
No, because it's just two of us just having a good conversation, and so it's very authentic. We just have the conversation among friends.
Ethrophic Burnett is running for Minneapolis City Council in Ward 5. That's right, there's a city election this year, so look into all these candidates across the city. This is the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.